Hey, this is John Smith from ExtraHop Networks, and this is going to be a quick video that will correspond to a blog post that we're writing called Save the SIEM. Anyway, the first thing I want to demonstrate is how you can easily do something that I call setting context in flight. Here we have a basic segmentation audit trigger that the customer would just basically fill in these protocols and ports and CIDR blocks that are acceptable, and then we would report on something that happens outside of them. Now, think of this in terms of setting context in flight. If we were looking to audit a particular segment, in this case, we have a fictitious PCI segment. If we wanted to do this with syslogs or NetFlow, right, we would have to potentially write millions of logs to to Splunk or a backend SIEM or a backend NetFlow receiver, and then parse those logs on the back end to get context. So we're able to determine that there's a problem after it's written. So after the log is committed, we then have a backend batch process that looks for violations of these particular policies. The way Data Analytics with ExtraHop works is that we're able to set context in flight. So what we'll do is determine whether or not something is actionable, and then we'll syslog it. One of the challenges that security teams face today is simply the sheer amount of data that they have to work with. With our platform, what we're trying to do is not give security engineers more data, we're trying to give them better data. And so here we've essentially cast the web, we've set the protocols and ports that are acceptable, and we simply need to sit back and wait for someone to run across it or someone to fly into it. That way, once we see something, then we will send a syslog, and we've integrated here with Splunk Cloud. There you'll see the couple of external DNS requests. So here we'll look at two rules we've set. The first one is that you see the bang in front there. I don't want this environment to have any conversations with internet-based hosts. So anytime the server is an external host, I want an alert. And secondly, anytime there's a violation of any of these ports and protocols, I want to receive an alert. So let's look at these first. If we look at the client side here, we notice that SSH is not an approved port or protocol. So what I'm going to do is come over here. This particular server is actually being under surveillance for that PCI rule. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do an SSH command. I'm going to SSH to an internal IP address. And so this is getting that lateral movement, right? We're auditing that lateral movement. Anytime someone violates the protocol, you should see a protocol violation. Here you're seeing my SSH session that I have to use to test with. But let's go ahead and sort this by descending time. So when I SSH to this other host, eventually you'll see this populate. Even though it's blocked there, we don't allow it. There you see immediately 1.189, 1.189. You see immediately we have a protocol violation. Likewise, I want to give you an example of an egress violation. So we said earlier that we don't want any external access. So I'm going to come here and I'm just going to borrow one of these fast flux IPs right here. All right. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to do an NS lookup on one of these fast flux IPs. So here, and I'm going to type server. All right. Now this is UDP, so even if the lookup fails, it should still show up here, right? So I'm going to look up Google on this external IP here, right? So we're going to see an egress violation, and it could be that has been shut down now. I'm not sure, but eventually you're going to see it pop in here. You'll see a DNS request to a DNS server in the Ukraine. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 events, all of which are actionable. I have a rule about what ports and protocols are allowed to communicate with this PCI segment. And I also have a rule saying I want alerted when there's any non-RFC 1918 egress. Using syslogs, using NetFlow, writing to Splunk or writing to syslog, you might have to parse through 10,000, 100,000, maybe even 1 million different events. And that means you're going to have to parse them, index them, You're going to have all the costs and all the labor associated with that. And then when you're setting the context, you have to do that with a back-end process. Here, we're actually determining something's actionable by setting the criteria beforehand. So this could drastically reduce the amount of syslog traffic that you have to sort through. Thanks so much for watching. Again, this is John Smith with ExtraHop Networks.